This morning, the unrest in Austin. Campus protests have happened at UT since the 1960s, so what made last week's any different? And will it result in political benefit or political fallout? State Rep Gina Hinojosa represents the university, and she is one of our guests. New polls show strong support for Governor Abbott's handling of the border, but a majority of likely voters do not like school vouchers that he's pushing. The pollster has a big prediction on another topic for the next legislative session. And GOP Congressman Tony Gonzalez is not running scared, blasting two colleagues as scumbags and Klansmen for opposing aid to Ukraine and Israel. Why moderate Republicans are no longer hiding their feelings for the far right.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning. April is almost over, and politically there's lots to talk about. Let's take a look at the headlines here. Moderate Republicans are no longer hiding their feelings with far-right members of their own party. Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez called two far-right members of his party, quote, scumbags, and suggested they were Klansmen for voting against aid to Ukraine and Israel. Gonzalez was referring to Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida and Bob Good from Virginia. After Gonzalez said that, though, Governor Abbott endorsed him, and House Speaker Mike Johnson has helped Gonzalez raise $300,000. The Texas Supreme Court is blocking Harris County from giving a basic income to more than 1,900 of its poorest residents. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago in Inside Texas Politics. Harris County wanted to give $500 a month to these folks. It was using federal money to do so. But Attorney General Ken Paxton sued to stop it, saying the Constitution is clear. You cannot give public money to private individuals. The state Supreme Court stopped that payout while this case plays out in court. And the Travis County District Attorney, Jose Garza, could lose his job, the first test of a new state law. An Austin woman filed a lawsuit to throw Garza out of office. She alleges that he does not prosecute some drug and abortion cases. Republicans passed House Bill 17 last year, making it easier for voters to remove DAs. A hearing on this is set for May 16th. Let's start this morning, though, with what happened at UT Austin. College students protesting peacefully, but without permission of the university. Governor Greg Abbott ordered state troopers there in riot gear. Dozens of people were arrested. State Rep Gina Hinojosa is our first guest this morning. She took our phone call. She's a Democrat from Austin and a UT alum who actually represents the university right now in the Texas House of Representatives. Representative, welcome back to the program. I want to ask you about something that the UT president, Jay Hartzell, said the other day in his statement. He said, quote, "Our rules matter," talking about the campus, "and they will be enforced. Our university will not be occupied." What's your reaction to that?
I think the way the university and our officers, DPS officers, responded was reckless and put our students in harm's way. I understand there are rules, but the university inviting in DPS troopers on horseback, from what I could tell, looked to be about 100 to confront peaceful protesters who had not broken any laws. That was uncalled for. It was reckless, and it put our kids in harm's way.
Have you heard from the university president at all in your official capacity?
I've talked to him, yes.
And did you express this, and what did he say?
Yes, I did have a very candid conversation with him about this, and he said that the events happening across the country on other college campuses are what inspired him to invite DPS officers onto our campus. And my response to that is, yes, we are all seeing sensationalized news from across the country, but we know our community. We know this community at UT Austin. And from what we experienced, from what we know, these were peaceful protesters. And the state cannot take a preemptive act of arresting people, Texans, because they fear they're going to commit a crime. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. And the freedoms, the liberties of our students were violated.
Did the president express any regret to you, or did he stand by his decision to invite in DPS?
He did not express regret.
The university denied the group permission to protest. Was it a mistake for this group to go forward with that without permission?
Look, here's what I know. Students protest. I did it when I was at UT on the campus. We occupied with a sit-in UT Law School. Jesse Jackson came to that town. It was a big to-do. And the administration sensibly just ignored us, and it passed. We spoke our piece, and I'm not sure if they took any action with respect to the issue we were protesting, but it did not escalate into an event like yesterday.
The campus at UT has been home to protests for decades. Why do you think this one was different?
I think we have a governor who is eager to prove up his MAGA credentials in the national spotlight for whatever reason that is. I honestly don't even know what the reason is, but there seems to be this relentless push on the part of the governor to prove that he is more MAGA than any Republican politician. We see it play out repeatedly. And my one ask of the university is that it not get caught up in that show.
Did you share that with the president when you spoke with him?
I sure did.
Representative, thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, let's bring in the roundtable to discuss the politics of all this, and certainly a lot is laced into it. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Bud, as you have so aptly pointed out, campus protests have gone on at UT and all the big universities since the 1960s. Why was this different?
You know, in the spring, it's protest season. There's almost always something that draws students out to rail, protest, one thing or another. In this case, you had President Hartzell, who said he wanted a significant police presence on campus. He saw what had happened on other campuses across the country. He didn't want that to happen at UT. He didn't want the Occupy, the tents going up on campus. You know, it's legal to protest. It's legal to have free speech. It's not legal to block sidewalks, to block passage, to shut down the university.
Was that an overreaction, though, do you think? I mean, we are watching what's happening in other places, and the protests are a heck of a lot bigger there, and students are camping out.
Well, what you see here is that when you call the police, they come in and act like police. And so you have the DPS came in, a caravan came in of officers from Houston. I don't know who was manning the driver's license stations, but they all came in from Houston, and they all came in and carried out their training, without much regard for the level of crimes that were being committed. And obviously those cases they filed are being thrown out. Probably would have been thrown out if they'd gone to court.
Bernadine, is there any political benefit or fallout for anyone, Governor Abbott, anyone else involved in this?
I think it's too soon to say that, because however, the way that the police came onto that campus, you still had kids. You still had students who were arrested and then released because you questioned the validity of them being arrested. So I think that it has to play out, because let's talk about back in the 60s when we did have protests, and protesting is part of our fabric. That's what we do. And then back then you had the optics. Remember, what changed the whole narrative back then was civil rights and other issues. What changed that fabric was the visual, the optics of seeing the protesters thrown down the streets with water hoses and stuff.
Yeah, Kent State was another big one too, yeah.
And that's what happened now, the optics, that according to reports, the violence did start until the police showed up. So, and then keep in mind too that the Department of Public Safety does not have a good history of coming in escalating situations. Look at Dallas.
Yeah.
You know, they were asked to leave.
When DPS was brought up here to help out to lower the crime rate up here,
yes.
they were eventually asked to leave on that.
Well, Austin too.
And Austin as well. Bud, what do you think? Any political benefit or fallout for anybody involved in this?
Representative Hinojosa said it's a national election year, and the governor's trying to look tough for whatever opportunities may be ahead for him on a ticket or in an appointment of some kind. I think that's the prime political, not fallout, but benefit, is that the governor looks tougher than other governors across the country.
Here's what struck me about this whole thing. We saw what happened on Wednesday with the large police presence. On Thursday, the demonstration was even larger, And nobody was around. The police were on scene, but they stayed back to make sure everything was peaceful. That's quite a contrast day to day there.
And there was a large protest in San Antonio, too, UT San Antonio, that went completely unpoliced, or just was allowed to proceed. But what you might have, if young people voted, there might be a downside. But young people are voting less than ever before.
If they did vote, indeed. All right, guys, thanks so much. Back with some more stuff, including this here. Take a look. When we come back this morning, Dade Phelan and some Republicans calling their challengers puppets for West Texas billionaires. Is that going to help or hurt them in next month's Republican runoff? And Texans support Governor Greg Abbott's work along the border, but they disagree with him on school vouchers. Jason Villalba with the new numbers from this political poll, and Inside Texas Politics returns. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Now to a new political poll. Likely Texas voters support what Governor Greg Abbott is doing along the border. A majority even likes the new law that would make illegal immigration a state crime. That one is called SB 4, and as you know, courts are still considering whether it is constitutional. But a majority of Texans do support that. Still, though, those same voters do not like the idea of school vouchers. 57% of likely voters against it. This is the one that Governor Abbott has been pushing hard for. The Texas Hispanic Policy Foundation conducted this survey, and former State Rep Jason Villalba is the CEO. So we sat down with him on this week's episode of Y'all-itics to take those numbers apart. What happens here with vouchers? If the public's saying we're not for it, does Abbott still really push for this next legislative session?
I think he's made it clear that he is going to continue to push on this issue. It's important to him. It's important to his staff. He's invested a tremendous amount of resources in cobbling together a new legislature of people that support this issue, and he will continue to push.
Does he lose out on something, though, if he gets this passed and you have this many Texans who oppose it?
I think in this legislative cycle, he will push what he pushed last time, right? Blanket vouchers all across the board. But I think this time, he's willing to compromise. There is a middle ground here, right? And the middle ground is to say, look, let's means test it. If you are a disadvantaged economic parent and you need resources to send your kids to the best schools, and you make under X number of dollars per year, then we'll supplement your income.
But all that was brought up last time, and we watched this play out before, where it says, oh, let's just do special needs, oh, let's just do people who are below a certain income. And then Governor Abbott's last proposal was $10,000 across the board to anybody, which is way more than the state gives to public schools now. Well, do you think numbers like you guys have pulled here is going to make Abbott back off some of that?
Look, I have no perception that somehow our poll is going to change his mind.
Sure.
But I do believe that if enough people speak, if enough people in the community, in the rural areas, and even in the urban areas, start talking about this issue and how it impacts them. If African Americans and Hispanics overwhelmingly are in opposition of this, it just doesn't make sense politically. The only issue where he's gotten out of alignment with the popularity of the issue is on the school voucher issue.
Well, let's talk about another big issue, abortion. That's a question you asked about, an issue you asked about. And the likely voter preference among 4 potential policies, more than half of the people you guys asked said that they would support abortion. They would prefer abortion be legal through at least 12 weeks of pregnancy. State law right now, if you don't know, the heartbeat bill passed. It's until a fetal heartbeat is detected. After that, you cannot perform an abortion. That's usually about 6 weeks into pregnancy. A smaller number, I think 44% said that they only prefer abortion, or they prefer abortion to be illegal unless a woman's life is at risk. So this is out of alignment a little bit here with a lot of Republicans, not just Governor Abbott.
Well, this is an issue we're seeing resonate all over the country, most recently in Arizona. In Texas, only 15%, that means 85% of other people feel differently, only 15% approve of an abortion prohibition like that of Arizona.
Yeah.
So only 15% of the voters would agree to have something like they have in Arizona. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that there's no segment, Republican or Democrat, that's going to be in favor of that kind of prohibition. So when the legislature comes back, I guarantee you there will be an Arizona-style prohibition on abortion, and I guarantee you most Republicans will likely support it. Why? Because all of the PACs will tell them that if they don't do that, then they will be opposed by that PAC. So the Texas Right to Life and the Alliance for Life will all line up against that.
You're saying here, though, that your numbers are showing that voters do not want that kind of prohibition by and large, but that when we get to the next legislative session, we're going to see a prohibition like that brought up, and that a majority of Republicans will vote for it? Do you think it passes?
It'll be filed on the first day. If not before, the first day of filing, you'll see that bill being filed. And I'm almost certain that given the composition of the legislature, that it will pass.
Tighter abortion restrictions in Texas, maybe an Arizona-style bill? Villalba says get ready for it. We also talked about the poll that says gaming and casinos are a likelihood here next year. This week's episode of Y'all-itics ready to download right now wherever you get your podcasts. And up next here this morning, the Roundtable is ready when we come back.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
All right, time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Bud Kennedy is back with us from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Bud, let's talk about Speaker Dade Phelan, a number of others in the Republicans in the Texas House. They're not being shy now about calling their challengers to these incumbents puppets of West Texas billionaires. They wouldn't have done this just a few months ago, a few years ago.
Well, because the West Texas billionaires were funding all the Republican campaigns. But now, and it's a very dangerous gambit for them, because basically what they're saying is that, hey, all the Christian oilmen, the rich Christian oilmen are for my opponents, so vote for me. And Republican primary voters, very few in a runoff, may say, well, the rich Christian oilmen, Ferris Wilks, Tim Dunn, may have a right idea.
Is it too late, Bernadine, for Phelan and others to be saying this when Phelan especially is running behind himself in that Beaumont district? I'm
thinking that they have done polling, and apparently the polls show that this is a winnable strategy. You would say that you do what you think works. But also, as in any election, particularly in runoffs, what's going to matter is turnout. You must be able to get your supporters back to the polls, especially doing a runoff when the expectations and it shows that the turnout is low.
Yeah, and of course, this election is May 28th, which is the day after Labor Day.
Right, and the early voting begins May 20th. It's going to be terrible trying to get people out. One thing I will say about Dade Phelan's commercial, he emphasizes that these are people from West Texas who are trying to take away Southeast Texas vote. And that is what happens. They put people in the House, they call and tell them how to vote. Their own district never even hears from those lawmakers. They take all their orders from the two guys in West Texas.
The election I said after Labor Day, it's after Memorial Day,
right,
on May 28th. Yeah. But doesn't this suggest a deeper split in the GOP for this really to be on display to everybody?
Well, everything is split now in the GOP, and we see everything split over foreign aid in Washington, over the split between the donors, the attacks on Texas for lawsuit reform. Everything now is establishment versus anti-establishment. The church conservatives on the outside, fighting against the Texas House and the inside. Everything is, they've cast it all. I was at a Republican meeting last week in Fort Worth. Every race, every runoff between Republicans was cast as a battle of good versus evil. You never heard that among Republicans.
Inside the GOP, wow. Yes. Bernadine, Tony Gonzalez, state rep from San Antonio, his district has the largest stretch of the border than anybody else. He is, too, like Dade Phelan, isn't afraid to call out members of his own party. He called out Matt Gaetz from Florida and Bob Good from Virginia, called them, quote, scumbags, and suggested that they might be Klansmen, or they were Klansmen maybe in the past. That's either confidence or it's crazy. Which one is it?
I think it's both. And what is even more amazing is as soon as he said it or as soon as it was reported, then you had the Governor Abbott, who came out and endorsed him. And then you had the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, out raising funds for him.
How surprising was it that Abbott came out and endorsed him and Speaker Johnson went down to the Valley to raise money with him, $300,000?
I don't know if it was more surprising as it was to show the strength that they are behind Gonzalez, which is apparently what they need. And keep in mind, during the primary, Abbott had a lot of success. So I think that endorsement will help Gonzalez.
And Bud, is that going to be enough to carry the centrist Republican like Gonzalez over the finish line?
Well, that's the thing. They're going down to endorse him because he's capable of getting things done for the state of Texas and for the people of Texas and in Congress. He's in the middle. He can get enough votes among people. He can even draw some Democratic support. He can actually get laws passed. The opponent, Brandon Herrera, can make videos about guns and put them on YouTube and talk about how much he enjoys Nazi regalia. He's more of a hobbyist than a Nazi, I'd say, and how much he loved the South and let's shoot all the Yankees. And he can do all those things in Washington, but he can't get bills passed.
How close is that race, Bernadine? Herrera and Tony Gonzalez?
Well, it depends upon who you believe. Because Gonzalez seems to think that he's far ahead, that he's going to win. And his opponent is saying the mere fact that he's calling names shows that he's losing. So I think that it's particularly with the endorsement from Abbott, I think he's doing okay. Because if you look at some of Abbott's history, he doesn't really endorse and back losers. So I think that I think Gonzalez is going to win it. It's just there's going to be a lot of bad feelings, which are already there.
And that's the split we were
Which
talking
are
about.
already there.
Split, and this is an example that each side now in this split is trying to firm up their side, and the very narrow majority in the Republican Party, the establishment, is just trying to make sure that the insurgents don't get another toehold. It all comes down to the few people who vote. You know, a few years ago, only 4% of the voters in Texas sent Ted Cruz to the U.S. Senate. Election May 28th, May 20th, early voting begins. That's when it comes to.
All right, guys, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics. Hope you can join us then. Take care.